Hi, this is Ken Gidge, and this is The Art of Politics. Look, when you have a child, you hope they grow up to be nice and good and adventurous, and you want them to love you, and you want them to turn out well, and you just want everything good for them. Well, I have one child, and his name is Sky, and I want to introduce you to him right here. This is Sky. How are you, Sky?
I'm well.
You're very, very well. And you graduated from high school here in the city of Nashville, is that correct?
That's correct.
Where?
Yes.
Where?
Nashville High.
Nashville High.
Yeah.
You were the first one to be in the new school, is that correct?
Yeah, they were doing the transition at the time.
And the last person to be in the old high school?
Our diploma had Nashville High. There was no North and South. That's the last year they did that.
Okay. But the high school on Elm Street, you were the last...
Yeah, they got rid of the 9th grade, I think. Made it more in line with the rest of the
Your
schools.
grandfather graduated from there, your father graduated from there, and, well, it's 3 people from the family went to the same school. But then you went to UNH.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit. Did you like it?
Mostly. Had its ups and downs, like anything in life.
What did you like about UNH?
Well, the freedom from you.
Yeah.
I started as having no major, like undecided. Then I went to English. Didn't like English so much. Went to journalism. Graduated with a degree in journalism and found out that that was not quite so marketable. Because during my journalism internship, somebody actually hung a Grim Reaper above the newsroom door with a question mark next to it. And the newspaper I was interning at, their stock crashed.
Yes.
The owning company's stock crashed, and I was in the newsroom when all the reporters who had been working there for 10, 20, 30 years crowded around a computer and watched on Google as their, I guess, savings disappeared.
That was their jobs. And you were one of the very first to go, I take it.
Well, I mean, it was a 3-month internship, so, and I mean, it was pretty clear that they weren't going to hire anybody.
No more people, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, journalism, it's tough right now, as you know. You were always, from the day you were born, you had some sort of a computer to your disposal. So do you get all your news online?
Yeah, mostly.
Excuse me.
Mostly because I don't have access to a American cable television.
Okay, so you couldn't get a job here in the United States. What type of jobs did you have, by the way?
I moved to Boston with no employment, but decided that Boston seemed more exciting than Nashville.
Good choice. Yeah, good choice.
And in Boston, I had temp agency jobs. And I had a job for a while working in the basement of a mental hospital, filing files. Terribly depressing job. But the temp agency jobs weren't that great. During the weekend, though, I was tutoring privately, just tutoring English. Friends of friends, maybe just moved to the country, helping them out with their schoolwork, stuff like that.
And what were you teaching them?
Just high school English, maybe idioms, maybe helping them explain like what the assignment meant, looking over their papers.
Where were these people, the child from?
China.
Oh, China?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they learned, and from that, what happened?
I did that for a while, and I decided that I enjoyed my weekend work more than I enjoyed working for temp agencies, being loaned out to different offices throughout Boston.
And then you came home and you told your parents what?
I told you I was getting a job in China.
And that's what you did. You took off, and you've been there for about 3 years.
About two.
Well, 2 in a row, but you've been there for a little bit more than that, I think. You can't figure it out. Your parents kidding
Oh,
because
you know better than I do.
we miss you.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we do. You know, no kids are happy to get away from their parents, but China. Now, when you first went there, you were in the northern part.
In a city called Shenzhen. It's actually located in the subarctic. Very cold, about 5 million people there. Not very well known. Not very many foreigners. Economically right now it's doing quite well, but it's north of North Korea.
So you weren't far from North Korea.
Yeah, very close to North Korea.
And you could have gone there on the weekends if you wanted to.
You got to do some special passes, but I knew some people who went to North Korea. You can visit there, or I mean, I don't know about.
If you're from China, you could visit.
Yeah, but if you're from America, I mean, maybe with the leadership turnover there now, it's different. But there were ways that you could go. You would have to stay in one hotel in the capital, from what I understand. I mean, there was a while when you were encouraging me to visit North Korea.
I was.
And I was actually considering it, and then the leader passed away, and now there is a new dear leader, and I'm not sure if it's on Google Maps now.
That's true, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it?
The gulags.
Yeah, the gulags. It looks like 5% of the country is a gulag.
You showed me something on maybe people can go to it on Google. North Korea at night and South Korea.
Yeah, that picture. It's a satellite picture.
Completely dark in North Korea.
The capital has lights. I mean, Japan, it's a satellite picture, and I guess it was measuring lights emitted from the cities.
Yeah.
Like Tokyo, just a blob of light. Japan, like just a snake all lit up.
Yeah.
And then Korea, South Korea, all lit up. North Korea, you saw the picture.
Yes.
One little dot, just the capital.
And people can go to Google Earth and find that. It's quite amazing.
Yeah.
Now, when you were there, did you...
in China. Yeah.
In China, anybody talk about North Korea? Anybody go there? Do they ever tell you?
People would mention it now and again. People would mention it in comparison to China, yeah.
And do they have any horror stories about it?
They just said it was a horrible place. It was poor. Not much beyond that. You need to understand that the news there is very controlled. People know that North Korea isn't doing well, but they don't know the same amount of horror stories that we know. And one time I met a taxi driver who told me North Korea was a better place to live than America.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's you.
He believed that. He believed that.
People believe a lot. Now, but when you went there to the northern part of China, were you an oddity?
Yeah, of course. People would stare, take pictures, try to secretly take pictures, things like that.
And so were you popular, or were you just an odd type of
I'd
character?
say that, well, you know that the Chinese, they study English from a very young age, and they also watch many movies. American movies are the most popular movies almost everywhere in the world. And so when they see somebody like me, I look like I'm from a movie, I'm a native speaker of the language they've been studying for 6 years, they want to talk to me. So was I popular in the sense that they wanted to be my friends? I'm not sure, but I was popular in the sense that people wanted to interact with me.
Really? Well, that's fascinating, and you were telling me about how the girls really liked you because...
Yes, there's some women who search for visas in China.
Ah.
I was actually warned of that by my first school that I worked for.
And that was in the north part. Then you moved to the center of China?
Yeah, the center, in Shandong, in Jining, a very small city. Most Chinese people have never heard of it. Terrible
Small
place.
city of how many?
I don't know, maybe approaching 1 million. Small by China standards.
Small by China standards.
Okay, small by China standards.
And what did they do there? What type of... industry or?
It was they had a lot of textiles, some manufacturing. On the outskirts, I know that they had coal plants, but I never visited them. The pollution there some days was so terrible that the bus drivers had trouble driving.
Really?
Yeah.
So then you moved to the the southern part of China,
Yes, where I live now.
and the name of the city?
Shenzhen.
Shenzhen. And what is it close to?
It's right across the river from Hong Kong.
Can you see Hong Kong?
Yeah, from parts of Shenzhen you can see Hong Kong.
Now, is it hard to get to Hong Kong?
For me, it's easy. For me as a foreigner, it's quite easy. For many Chinese people, it's very difficult.
They can't.
No,
Why?
because the disparity between the two cities. I've never been to Tijuana or San Diego.
Okay.
But in my head, I think of the situation, the difference between Tijuana and San Diego. It's the same country, technically, but different legal systems, different levels of poverty, different rule of law, different health standards. I mean, in Hong Kong, just recently, it was announced, before it was Japan, but now women, out of anywhere in the world, the Hong Kong women live the longest. Excellent healthcare there. Just across the border in Shenzhen, and I can speak from personal experience, their hospitals are terrible. Terrible.
When you say terrible, what do you?
The doctors seem very unqualified and untrained. Granted, there is a language barrier, but part of becoming a doctor in China, you're supposed to be able to speak English. Some can, some can't. I can say that maybe the first hospital I visited in Shenzhen, there was a man left in the lobby, blood on his side, left in the sun in a hot lobby on a gurney. Nobody helping him.
Why?
I don't know. Somebody forgot him there?
They just. Did he die? What?
I don't know. Something was wrong.
Do you see people in the street like that, or?
My second day in China, I actually saw a man outside of a hospital emergency room with his legs torn open and his skin turning green, laying outside of a hospital emergency room. Because in China, they don't have health care, and they also don't have the law that the doctors need to help you, and they don't have the Hippocratic Oath. If you don't have the money, they let you die.
That's kind of like what we don't think of China. We think of China as healthcare for everyone.
No, definitely not. If you have cancer, and this happened to a friend's family's friend in China, a Chinese friend, their mother's best friend got cancer. Halfway through the cancer treatment, she ran out of money. Now, this was treatable, curable cancer. Because she ran out of money, the doctors and hospitals stopped treating her, and she died.
Well, that doesn't seem right.
No, it doesn't seem right at all, but that's the truth.
So I always thought, I guess maybe a lot of people think that in countries like that, healthcare is free. You're saying it's not free at all? There's nothing?
Some people who live in the cities, they have different healthcare programs, and in China, I'm an English teacher, so I can't go very to specifics. Through the business, you have healthcare, and the Chinese culture is also saving a lot of money to spend in emergencies. That's part of their culture, and they save a lot of money.
For emergencies.
For emergencies. And on top of that, you need to realize that the American healthcare expenses are so inflated because so many people can't afford it and the cost gets passed on. In China, that hasn't happened. So, say breaking your arm, if you've saved a reasonable amount of money, that's a problem you can solve. Your family can solve it.
Because they have the money to solve it.
Yeah. It's reasonably priced.
So they save the money many times just for healthcare.
Yeah. It's actually causing, there's some theories it's causing problems with their consumer market because people don't want to spend money.
So they let other people die. Now, if you were in front of the hospital and you saw this person with his leg open or dying, and you took him inside, would you be responsible for him?
I have heard stories that that's the truth, yeah. When I saw that, unfortunately, man, it's my second day in China. I knew no Chinese. I didn't understand why he would be left outside of an emergency room. you need to imagine it. This guy, he was a migrant worker, obviously, very poorly dressed, dirty legs. I've never seen something that terrible before or since. And just right outside of a hospital. And I guess he couldn't afford it, and nobody was willing to pay the bill. And if nobody's willing to do that, he stays on the sidewalk, I suppose, until he dies.
Why don't we see that over here?
I'm not sure, but it's the truth. It's not hard to run into those things. Granted, that was a third-tier city, or second-tier city, Shenyang. In the first-tier cities, Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, cities like that, perhaps it's not as likely. Perhaps they have slightly better services. But when you get further away from those areas, the more developed areas, you can see some pretty terrible things and hear some pretty terrible stories.
Wow, I really didn't know that. I think everybody thought, or excuse me, everybody thinks. You'll have to excuse me for a second. That China would have health care for everyone, but that sounds awful. And they just let people stay on the sidewalk.
If you have money, you can live. If you don't have money, a lot of times you'll die.
China's a communist country?
On paper, yes, it's run by the CCP, the Communist Party of China.
But the majority of the country is not communist.
To be honest, it's not a communist system anymore. Becoming a member of the Communist Party is difficult, and it's considered actually a very good thing. I believe they have 80 million members about.
80 million communists.
80 million communist members.
Card-carrying communists.
Yeah. But it's difficult to do. They actually take the best of the best. But the thing is, they'll also take businessmen who make their money through capitalism. So I'm not sure how they could call themselves a communist party if some of their most influential members are capitalist businessmen.
Oh, like free enterprise, making a lot of money, etc.
Yeah.
But now you said 80 million. Well, there's a billion over there.
I believe it's 80 million.
So there's a billion. So 900 million are not communists.
1.3 billion, I believe. Yeah. The Communist Party, they try to have the best of the best.
But when you hear China, you hear it's a communist country. Mm-hmm. But it's just a communist, in a sense, a government, and most of the people aren't communists.
Communist in name. I actually used to eat lunch with a member of the Communist Party. She was a teacher. She was extremely intelligent, spoke English extremely well. We would eat lunch. I think she wanted to practice her English, eat at McDonald's almost every week. And she told me she knew it was a joke. She knew it wasn't real. She knew it wasn't really a communist system.
So basically, you have this certain amount of people holding the rest of the people down.
I wouldn't put it that way. I mean, you got to realize that China has made there's been a lot of improvements there. I mean, I think never in human history have so many people gone from having almost absolutely nothing to having a little bit of something. I wouldn't necessarily describe it.
But the government is communist, is what I'm trying to say. But the majority of the people, if you're not in the government, you're not communist.
You're at a severe disadvantage if you are not a communist member and somebody else is, and they have a dispute with you.
Oh, so in other words, if you get bullied by a communist, you're in trouble?
Yeah, they get what they want, basically. I'm not a Chinese person. I'm an English teacher in China. This is what I hear.
Wow, this is fascinating. So what do people think about the government?
What do people think about the government? Okay, I'm going to preface this by saying that my Chinese is not that great. I'm just beginning to have conversations about politics and things like that. So the people that I meet and speak with are English speakers. That means that they're intelligent, hardworking, educated. They aren't what you would call the average Chinese person. And the information I get from them about their government is almost universally negative. They are not happy with some of the things that are happening.
Like what?
Just abuses of power, corruption. I mean, the government openly acknowledges corruption, says it's a threat to staying in power. I was in Jining, in that small city. A guy went in front of the Communist Party office and lit himself on fire.
Okay, that's a protest.
It's a protest, but the news was censored, and the only reason I found out about it was through my adult students. Some pictures circulated online, but they circulated on Twitter, which is blocked in China. So essentially, the people in that city had no idea that a man set himself on fire. Apparently, it was something about the government knocked down his factory and left him penniless and in debt. Things like that.
You have a story right here. Now this is an English-speaking paper, and the name of it is
China Daily.
China Daily, and it's how many English-speaking papers are there over there?
English language papers, I can't tell you an exact number, but the most popular ones have an English version. It's, as far as I can tell, it's mostly a propaganda thing for foreign countries. Because obviously the average Chinese person is not going to want to read his Chinese news in English. But I think it gives us a really interesting view, or half a view, of what the Chinese people see in their newspapers, which are all state-controlled. All the media is state-controlled.
So you mentioned about a taxi cab driver who thought that North Korea was better than the United States.
Yes.
Is this kind of what they're fed?
Yes, yes.
Is America over there with the Chinese government, are we the bad people?
Yes. I guess that's a simple way to say it.
Give me an example.
Just the articles are a lot of anti-American articles. If you recall our involvement in Libya, at that time I had a television with a Chinese cable hookup, and I would turn it on, and I couldn't understand much of what they were saying, but the Chinese word for Libya sounds like the English one. Just Libya, 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 pictures of jets. Then I would hear the word America, 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 attack, attack, attack. And this would almost loop the same story again and again and again for hours and hours and hours. It was really a media offensive against America, trying to drill home to the Chinese that America was a threat, America was bad. Maybe they should fear America, or at least China was better than America in some way.
Does this happen? Have you seen this happen before? I mean, Libya, we did certainly have an influence over there, but we certainly weren't the largest at that time. What
the involvement, as far as I understood it, the involvement of the European countries, which it was mostly a European-led offensive, but you need to admit that we provided the hardware.
Yeah. Okay.
That seemed to be almost ignored from what I could understand in the news.
That we were just the cause of it.
We were the cause. We were attacking. Here's another Iraq. America the threat. Stuff.
Talk
like
about
that.
Iraq. That America. That must be a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And for a while, there was a while when I'd meet a Chinese person, and the first words I hear them say is Libya. And when I was living in Shenzhen, when that happened. And also some taxi drivers. Usually they'd be pretty friendly, but I recall one man who just shouted at me, Obama was bad. And I said, why? And he said, because he's attacking Libya. The thing is, this taxi driver doesn't have any information about what it was like in Libya or what the Libyan people wanted. But, I mean, that's the impression he was getting from the media that he saw.
Anything else you can think about me? Is this like an everyday thing in the news, putting down America?
Yeah, it's a lot of anti-American thing. But the problem is that most Chinese people that I've met, the English-speaking Chinese people, they really like America, and most Chinese people want to live in America. They admire our power, our movies, things like that, and the government has a real credibility problem now.
How?
They've lied to the Chinese people so many times that a lot of people won't believe them anymore.
Give me examples of how they lie.
Do you know the Beijing has bad air quality, right?
Yes.
The American embassy gives their own air quality readings for the Americans living in the area.
Okay.
There's different ways of measuring it. The Americans would measure it one way, the scientifically accepted way, to measure whether this was harmful to the health. American embassy says harmful, don't go outside. Chinese government says not harmful, going outside is fine.
So,
But this is actually something that changed recently.
in what way?
The Beijing government began releasing data that you could say was more correct
About the air quality,
about the air quality, yeah. And the media, state media, has been allowed to cover the air quality story.
Really? Mm-hmm. Are they? That's changed the news. Are they changing the way? Are they thinking more green? Is that something that takes place?
Green investment. A lot of it is a lot of talk about that.
In what way? They talk
Talk
for
about
themselves?
solar panels and protecting the earth is important.
This is all relatively new, though.
Since I've been there for the past 2 years or so years, it's been pretty constant. It's something that they really want to hammer home.
The air quality, we just saw it recently, for God's sake, in Beijing. It was so bad you couldn't even see across.
People couldn't see the stoplights.
Couldn't see the stoplights.
Some people couldn't see the stoplights, yeah.
And I hear they couldn't really know how to drive over there.
Crossing the street is very dangerous. I mean, I've seen car accidents. I've seen fatal car accidents. I've seen the aftermath of fatal car accidents. Absolutely shocking. And it's shocking that there'd never be any change in the level of enforcement, but it just doesn't seem like there's momentum there to do it, and a lot of Chinese people accept that as just a part of life. Since I've been in China, I've had 2 coworkers who had family members die in car accidents. It's terrible, yeah.
Do they know how to drive at all? I mean, can we make money going over there, teach them how to drive, or?
Well, the driving schools are not very good, for one thing.
Obviously not.
They're not very well regulated. Nobody really, I mean, a lot of people don't respect the stoplights. A lot of people don't respect traffic rules. A lot of the roads are poorly planned. So, I mean, you can imagine you have a red light, a green light, a guy who likes to drive fast, another guy who likes to drive fast. Both of them don't want to stop. Both of them are going quickly. They almost hit each other. They swerve. Somebody on a scooter gets hit. Stuff like this every day. I mean, you can find YouTube videos of this. I think there's a YouTube video. I'm not sure what city, but it's just like all the car accidents from a year. It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
So the best way to get around is what? Taxi cab?
Yeah.
Get in a taxi
Yes,
cab?
yes, yes.
Is it really?
Taxi, yeah.
Are they expensive or cheap or?
Pretty cheap, pretty cheap. Yeah, you can go most places in the city for a reasonable amount of money.
And do they have trains?
Yeah, they have a lot of trains.
Is it good? Is it good system or?
It's an extensive system. It's not always a very well-run system. Like their subway in the city of Shenzhen is beautiful. I'm not sure who designed it. I think it might be a German company. I've been on it and there was a delay once. One time.
And that was it?
Yeah, the only time. Perfectly run, clean, new. They built it from scratch.
And most of them are not like that?
Every subway system I've seen in China has been relatively nice, especially compared to some places in America.
Really?
Yeah. I think because it's so new.
Oh, because of the newness of it.
Yeah.
When you say new, is it 10 years, 15 years?
10 years, 5 years.
So in other words, within the last 5 or 10 or 20 years, now they starting to get subway systems.
10 years, 5 years, 2 years.
What was it like before?
Lots of bikes.
Really? That's right. That's right. A lot of bikes. Today it doesn't sound like people are going to use bikes the way people drive.
No, people still use bikes. They use bikes, and you'll see people riding a bike on the side of the highway.
Which isn't very smart.
No, it's not very smart, but for some reason they feel that it's okay to do that.
Why, if you're under such a communistic reign of, you can't do anything unless you join the party, and then it's hard to join the party, Is there any rules? No one's following a rule. A red light means stop. That doesn't mean anything?
I think that the perspective, it's not really a communist reign. It's a lot of things are controlled, and there's a lot of resentment that the Chinese people have, but they're also quite happy that they're getting richer, that their lives are getting better so quickly. It's not as dictatorial as you may think.
Really?
Yeah.
So there's a lot more, with the wealth, there's freedom?
Yeah. If you have money, you have pretty much freedom to do anything, including sometimes kill people.
Really?
People can buy their way out of things like that, depending on how much publicity it gets, yeah.
Well, that's,
It's changing. It's changing. I believe it's changing. I've seen clear signs of change.
Now, with people, I think probably in the last 3 years, I think we've seen a couple, maybe here in the United States, protests in China. Is this a common protest on a daily basis?
I'm reading the same news that you are. I've only seen anti-Japanese protests in my experience there.
Not anti-government protests?
Oh, those are not too common, I don't think. I mean, I read some statistics that they had 10,000 or some kind of crazy number, but I've never seen it. I'm sure it's scrubbed from the media. I'm just not the right person to ask about that.
It wouldn't be very smart to go against the government in any way, I take it.
No, it usually isn't a smart thing to do.
Okay, the media over there, television media, is just strictly controlled?
Yeah, it's all controlled. I think last year they actually had an edict that they have the main central television, the government directly run television, and then they have like maybe the province television. And the provinces were producing some very interesting shows. They're getting great ratings. And the central government issued something saying that these shows were too entertaining.
Too entertaining?
Too entertaining. They needed to cut down on having excessively entertaining shows because they were too entertaining. And they needed more shows about how to do housework better and building socialist values.
Okay. Well,
There's a bunch.
I can think of a few TV shows we can bring over there that aren't too entertaining. Any American TV or?
Yeah, they love a lot of Chinese people love American TV. Love it, especially Friends for some reason. The show Friends.
Really?
It's simple. They can pick up the English from it. The humor is not. I guess it translates well.
So Friends is a top?
Yeah, Friends is very popular. Friends, and for some reason the show Prison Break.
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I've met Chinese people who can say no English except for Prison Break.
Okay.
And I watched about half an episode of that and thought it was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen.
But it was.
It's
probably to them extremely interesting.
It is to them very interesting. To be honest, their entertainment industry is not as developed, and they're censored a lot, or they self-censor, and the creativity is just not quite there yet. This is not like a China thing. I mean, Taiwan and Hong Kong, actually, their media and TV shows absolutely dominate the mainlands as far as popularity goes.
But can they? No, Taiwan. China wants it back, I take it.
Yeah, China believes that it is still part of China.
And do you think one day they will just go take it?
I don't know. I think the problem is that the government has framed itself as one party can rule, the Communist Party is China. That's how they say it. The fact is Taiwan is Chinese. Chinese people live there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was part of China for a long time.
Yes.
Hong Kong the same, Macau the same. I think if the government was willing to reframe the issue and not just say that the Communist Party meant China, then I can see in a long time peaceful reintegration.
You think so?
In a long time.
Do anybody hate Taiwan, or is there any, is it,
I haven't heard any hate.
is it a different world? You haven't been to Taiwan, I take it.
No, I haven't been to Taiwan, but they make good movies, and it's only maybe 24 million people. Shanghai in mainland China has 26 million people, but when you go to karaoke, almost all the songs are from Taiwan, because their music industry is so much more developed. And the
Oh,
singers,
really?
Yeah, it's very interesting. And they use different Chinese characters, so you can tell where the song came from.
So this is kind of bizarre. So how do they get, is Taiwan blocked? Meaning, is it blocked like you can't get shows, or the only way to get them is through satellite dishes, or?
For a while, I was listening to Taiwan news radio as practice for improving my Chinese listening, and that got blocked. So yeah, the news from Taiwan is often blocked.
What scares the Chinese government, or what scares the government, did you think, the most?
What scares the government? I don't just
Too much freedom?
Losing power, losing control, I guess. It's an often very inefficient system, but they seem very, very good at maintaining control.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Japan and China. Tell us a little bit about that. How is their relationship?
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with the dispute over the islands.
The islands around Japan.
They're quite close to Taiwan and China, but they're also close to Okinawa.
Okay.
The Daoyo, or I forget how to say it in Japanese. I actually have a representation of published in the Chinese newspaper of what they think of. They see Japan as doing.
Hold it. And tell us, what are we seeing?
Well, this is headline is Sino-Japan ties not easy to improve. There's a vulture posing as a dove, speaking behind a sort of podium, Japanese flag there, and he has apparently freshly sharpened his claws.
So it doesn't sound like that they're happy with Japan.
No, they're not, and that is part of what they teach people. They teach children to hate Japan from a very young age. I have a 6-year-old, my youngest student, her mother speaks English, and that's why she would come into our school so early. And she said, the Japanese people eat babies.
That's what the 6-year-old says?
Yes, she says, the Japanese people eat babies, and the Japanese people killed so many Chinese. And I mean, obviously, during World War II, the Japanese people treated China terribly.
It was awful, yes, it was awful. But this war will never end.
Well, I asked the girl, when did the Japanese people kill all these Chinese people? And she told me last year.
Last year.
Last year.
So why, but doesn't China and Japan do business together?
Yeah, they do business.
A lot of business? What business and what? Do you know?
And business and electronics. The Chinese people recognize that the Japanese have very high quality electronics. It's actually kind of funny because you can find many pictures online of people taking pictures of anti-Japanese protests, and they're using Japanese cameras. Or anti-Japanese protesters waving anti-Japanese flags and waving Chinese flags with a Sony camera around their neck, and the brand name clearly displayed.
That's well, they know where to get good products.
Well, they recognize the quality of the product. They're just not happy with.
No relationship at all, government-wise. You don't hear nothing like that. They just. Hey, you told me a story about a watch. I did get you a watch once. I don't know where it is, and it broke. Mm-hmm. And you went in to have it fixed. And what happened?
The man in the watch shop said I had to have a certain cog fixed, and he said, "Do you want the cog made in China or the one made in Japan?" And I said, "What's the difference?" And he said, "The The Chinese one is much cheaper. The Japanese one is more expensive. The China one will last 3 months. The Japanese one won't break. And this was not a political statement. That was just his job as a watchmaker, his experience, I suppose.
It sounds like somewhere along China and its people, it's sort of like it's like some sort of a game. Like there's a lot of I won't. They make the pollution is okay. Well, you can't see the lights. You know it's bad. They're saying it's good. The people know it's bad. But yet their government is saying, oh, it's okay.
That's changed recently, but there's many other issues like that. Chinese people, the government has a real credibility problem with them. You need to understand that their culture is not so much about fighting and revolution and sticking up for yourself as ours are. So they don't believe what the government is telling them, but they just say, okay, and
Would you say
go on with their life.
the majority of the Chinese people are very peaceful,
Yeah, I would say so.
not violent, not trying to...
No, not violent, quite peaceful, quite passive, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's a more or less stable society usually, except for, of course, some recent history and obviously some revolutions in the past. But it seems much more peaceful than just the people in general.
Would you say the majority of the people over there like America?
I'd say they like aspects of America. I'd say they believe that American movies are the most entertaining, that they would like to live in America, but they also believe, many believe, it's the world bully. And
The world bully.
The world bully, yeah.
That's how we're portrayed?
Well, I think that's how we're portrayed everywhere in the world.
Honestly?
Yeah.
Give me an example.
Give you an example?
Well, I think I know, but explain it to me as if I don't know. How is America, because we don't look at ourselves that way. Libya is a perfect example. We probably think we're helping Libya. Well, the Chinese say, no, you're destroying Libya.
The Chinese media, which is state-controlled, sent that message. Okay.
But the rest of the world...
I mean, the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, sanctions against countries. I mean, I don't agree with the argument. I don't agree with the argument that Iran should be able to have a nuclear bomb because America can have a nuclear bomb and it's a free world. I don't buy into that, but a lot of people do. And you can view America as the world bully, the world police. And that's an idea, an attitude that's prevalent in China. I mean, I was briefly in Egypt, and I mean, they had English language newspapers there, and you'd see a lot of that, of course.
About America?
Yeah. I remember this picture of George Bush holding the world and bouncing it like a little child with a toy ball.
So in other words, if people are watching the show, a lot of China, probably the government is trying to sell us as being bad, but you're saying around the world, people think that the Americans are bullies.
Of course, people around the world think America is a
well,
is a,
yeah,
is
not
a bully.
not everyone would.
Not everyone, I know. The Japanese people, by survey, like America more than Americans like America.
The Japanese people like America more than Americans?
Yes, the Japanese people.
I'd like to read that.
Like America more than America likes America.
And who took that survey?
Awesome.
So, okay, well, explain what this is, because you explained this a little to me and I couldn't figure it out.
Okay, so we have the Chinese newspaper,
Yeah.
which is all state-controlled. So the news articles, some of them are what we would consider normal, legitimate news articles, and other ones are slightly influenced by the government's goal of changing how people think or controlling it, and some of them are just way out there. We don't even understand how they could be published like that. Here, cost of living rises in cities across China.
Okay.
That's the truth.
Okay.
This is again.
Fairly well written.
It's a news article. It's a
Okay.
standard news article.
Okay, standard news article. All right.
This title of this article is "House Sister Taken into Custody on Suspicion of Forgery." This woman, she was actually the vice president of a rural cooperative bank, and she bought over 40 houses using forging documents and stuff like that.
Okay.
Which is more or less a real news article, but that's not something that happens in America so much. And I believe most of the houses she bought were meant for low-income families.
So she was, in her own way, helping. Well, helping
No, no, no,
herself a little, but
No. They were built by the government for low-income families.
Okay.
And she bought them, and because house prices are so high, I'm sure she rented them at some extraordinarily high. I mean, that's the game. A lot of people are playing it. You hear about arrests like this all the time.
so basically there's a free enterprise system there. It's just no way to.
Well, they have rules now. I think in some cities you can own one house. Some cities you can only own two. They have a lot of places you need to put 50% down for buying the house. In America, they'd never ask you for 50% of the value of the house.
No. 20, I think it has been. It's certainly a lot lower than that. Now, this lady who had 40 homes, making a little extra money, what happened to her?
Well, apparently she has been taken into custody. I don't know much about that. There was another woman who had done that. I believe she may have been executed.
Okay. That would solve the problem over here, a couple of those executions. But
It solves the problems there too, I guess.
do they make, do you hear about executions? Is that common?
In the Chinese media? No. But I read the BBC News website. I read Western news. Of course I hear about it and know about it.
But most of the Chinese people don't know of executions of others. Do they ever put it on TV to make an example out of people?
They did have a TV show for a while where they would interview people right before they were executed.
That was the show?
That was the show, yeah.
Well, that's a hell of a reality show.
It's pretty bizarre, or pretty morbid, I'd say.
I would say so, yes. And what would they say? I'm
sorry. I never saw it. I just knew it was taken off the air. I think
I can imagine.
Apologized to everybody and then went off to die.
Yes, like this lady who had 40 houses. What is this? Families suffer.
Okay, so we've seen the more or less real articles. Families suffer amid Tibetan flames of deceit is the title of this article.
And what does it mean?
It means that families are suffering because Tibetan people are setting themselves on fire in protest to China controlling Tibet.
Excuse me? I mean, that's what's in the article. That's not in the article, but that's what's meant.
Yeah, that's what the event is referring to. Essentially, the Dalai Lama in China is absolutely demonized.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You're saying, of course, I don't know.
And these people are being, quote, myths and falsehoods help lure people to fatal act. Basically, the media line in China is that the Dalai Lama is telling people to burn themselves to death for no reason. Wherever you stand on the Tibetan issue, they do have some legitimate grievances. I'm not sure setting themselves on fire is the right way to handle it.
Well, that's mostly the monks who really would like the Dalai Lama to come back.
Well, some monks, but also some regular people are burning themselves. But it's just being
under protest.
It's being explained as maybe almost a crazy mental health, anti-government issue that
I read a story about the
freaks would
father was
do.
interviewed and said his son wanted the money to buy something, but his son was an alcoholic. And
Yeah.
come to find out that wasn't it. It
Well,
was a
that
protest.
no, actually, it may have been it. I mean, but that's just one person who set himself on fire, which is what the news article would focus on.
Okay, what's this one? Online use, not abuse?
Okay, this is pretty much goes counter to what we as Americans would believe or think. Online use, not abuse. The subtitle here, it is a consensus that people's freedom of speech should have legal and political boundaries to prevent wrongdoing.
And what does this mean?
Essentially, people are going online and voicing their opinion or exposing government corruption and fraud. And certain people in government are not comfortable with having their corruption, fraud, or anti-government opinions voiced, so they consider that online abuse.
Are the people afraid of their government?
Yes, many are.
That didn't take long to answer. There was no hesitation on that one. They really are afraid of the government?
They're afraid of the government. They know that there's a red line they shouldn't cross or things they shouldn't do. I mean, they're not afraid just walking down the street, going to work, coming home, having a family, that kind of things. It's not like a North Korean or even time of Mao, or it's not that type of situation anymore as far as I've experienced.
Well, tell our watchers here about when you had on your computer you brought over. It was at Tiananmen Square. The person standing in front of the tank, stopping it.
Many Chinese people have not seen that picture.
Have not seen it.
No. On YouTube, you can find video of, I think maybe National Geographic did it. They showed Chinese college students who were studying abroad in America, I believe. They showed them that picture, and they said, "Oh, it looks like a military drill, or it's some sort of parade."
They had no idea.
Some didn't. Some had no idea what it was. The events of 1989, which I am definitely not allowed to speak about in class.
At all.
Yeah, at all.
Okay.
Those are not acknowledged, essentially, in history.
So let me see. As a teacher, are you told besides that anything else?
I've never been given any orders from the government, but a previous employer told me about the 3 T's that I were never to mention.
And?
Tiananmen, Tibet, and Taiwan.
Really? Mm-hmm. And no J's like Japan?
You can mention Japan, and all the students will say they want Japan to die, kill little Japan, stuff like that.
Well, that's nice. Over in China, are there religions? I mean, do they practice religion? Can they practice religion?
Yeah. They can practice religion. There's a lot of local religions, local to certain villages, ancestor worship, stuff like that. But there's also state-sanctioned Christianity. The state-sanctioned Christianity, it's quite interesting. They're not allowed to preach about the end of days. The government will build Christian churches. The government will fund it in some way, organize it, respect it, but the people preaching, they cannot preach that the judgment day will come or the end of the world will come, or at least they can't focus on that, because it suggests a time when the Communist Party would not exist.
Really?
Yeah.
So is Christianity the only religion that they sort of sanction? Is it Judaism or Buddhism?
There's obviously, there's Buddhism. A lot of the Buddhist structures and temples and even a lot of the beliefs were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976. But there's some Buddhism. Most Chinese people are probably atheists or agnostics.
Really? So they don't study a philosophy or a religion or?
Yeah. They've never had a need, never been introduced to it.
Well, when are you going back to China? Yeah, please tell us.
That should be the 25th of this month.
25th? Okay, yeah. Tell the people watching exactly where you're going, what you're doing.
teaching English in a city called Shenzhen, on the first special economic zone of China, across the river from Hong Kong.
It's the first economic zone,
It was the special economic zone, one of the first ones.
which is, what does that mean? One of the very first zones that
Experimenting with relating how hard you work to how much money you make.
Okay.
There's actually, around where the city outskirts used to be, there's actually guard posts.
Guide posts.
Guard posts, yeah.
With guides on it?
No, no longer guards,
okay.
but they were supposed to keep the capitalism inside
Oh.
the depravity of the economic zone.
Oh, I see.
Deng Xiaoping's idea.
So I guess he was pretty good for China. I mean,
Deng Xiaoping, yeah. In Shenzhen, especially in the south, they really love him. I mean, nobody will compare to Chairman Mao.
Of course not.
For as far as hero worship, but Deng Xiaoping is liked especially. He improved a lot of people's lives.
Well, you've talked a lot about what the Chinese think about Americans, America, but you're an American. They treat you fine over there?
Yeah, I've maybe one or two bad experiences.
What?
Just taxi drivers saying rude things. Maybe quite a few more that I couldn't understand. A lot of people call America the bully, stuff like that. I mean, nobody's been throwing rocks at me.
No, but basically you're treated
quite
okay.
well, yeah, quite well. Sometimes I think I'm given more respect than I've actually earned.
Why?
A white American, they consider it a very, not a novelty, but they think you know something. They think that you're smart in some way. That I guess we do have a better education system than they do, which is the truth. But they give you a lot of respect. And there are some trashy people, trashy foreigners that go over to China.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Who?
Who?
Well, I don't want any names.
Let me give you the names and addresses.
Okay.
You'll meet the people that would never really get a job in America, a well-paying job, and they drink too much, or they're womanizers, or they're gamblers, and they go to China, and the Chinese employer will tolerate this behavior from them because they're a marketable asset.
Because of who they are?
Because they're white, and because it makes the company or the school look more international, and they give the people more respect and leeway than they really ever should. As a foreigner in China, I come across people like that quite often.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So you're not that way, so you get a little bit more respect than other people. You really love the country.
Do I really love the country? I think it's better. The quality of living, the quality of my life there is lower than it would be in America. But I do think that my life is more interesting. And right now, I would like to have an adventure, grow.
Well, 2 or 3 years in China, that's an adventure. Well, Sky, I want to thank you because the hour is over. We have talked for an hour, and I do wish you good luck there. And I'll tell you, sometimes parents don't tell the kids they're proud of them, but I'm proud of you. I envy you. You have done...
Come on over.
Yeah, well, I just come to China. Mom would like to just go to China.
Come on, take a
maybe
holiday.
She would like me to have in China. But anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And next time you're here, come back and tell us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is Ken Gidge, and this has been the Art of Politics, talking about China. And I'll see you next week.